for me, the day that Craig Amundsen, my brother-in-law, who was also my friend, who I had gone to college with and been close with since that time, on the day that we held a memorial service for Craig in his hometown, which is Anamosa, Iowa, we gathered with his high school friends, some college friends, friends of the family, to remember Craig and to tell his story and to talk about his life. And as we were preparing to go to the memorial service that day, we turned on the television. And that was the day that the US started bombing Afghanistan. And it was a very difficult day for me because it was a day that I wanted to only think about Craig. But in the back of my mind, I was thinking about other people halfway across the world whose faces I had never seen and whose names I didn't know and whose stories were not going to be told. And so when Medea called from Global Exchange and offered this trip to Afghanistan, it was such a gift for me to be able to go and to meet these people and to hear their stories and to bring their stories to the people here in the US and to people around the world, because their stories are our stories. Their lives are like the lives of our loved ones who are lost. And it's important, no matter what people think about US bombing, for people to hear about the consequences of that bombing and hear about who has been affected by that and why, and how does that inform us in our future decisions about how we confront terrorism. So today I just wanted to share with you a couple stories and a couple pictures of some of the families that we met in Afghanistan who were directly affected by the US bombing. Here's a picture of a 6-year-old boy. He doesn't look 6 years old, he looks about 2.5, and he acts like he's about 1 year old. His name's Fardeen. His neighborhood was bombed. His neighborhood, which is a couple kilometers away from the Kabul airport, which was apparently the intended target. His neighborhood was bombed. 8 people in his neighborhood were killed. The day of the US bombing of his neighborhood, this 6-year-old stopped talking and refused to walk and has reverted to this infantile state. I went and saw him several times, and he acts like an infant. He's been so traumatized by what he's seen, by what he's heard, by the houses that were bombed, by his neighbors that were killed. And in Afghanistan, there's really no such thing as care for mental trauma. Here are 2 of his neighbors whose house was bombed. The girl's name is Safura. She's 10 years old, and she's standing with her 9-year-old brother, Hassan Hala. Their house was bombed. They were next door to the house where 8 people were killed. These children as well have stopped talking since the US bombed their house. The little girl was drooling constantly. The little boy had spasms. Their father says they're not sleeping at night. These are 9 and 10-year-old children, and again, there's no help for them. Here's the woman whose house was bombed. She's 25 years old. Her husband was killed by the Taliban several years ago. When her house was bombed, her mother and 7 other members of her family were killed. You can't see the picture well enough to see that one of her eyes has been injured and is cloudy. She has no sight in that eye anymore. She lives next door to the other children I just showed you. This is her home, what's left of it. She can't rebuild it. She has no money to do this. She has no income. She has no ability to earn a living. She's got a 7-year-old son to take care of, and they're both severely traumatized by their experience. Here's another man we met from a different neighborhood. His name is Asisola. He's 20 years old. He was asleep at home, got up in the middle of the night to go to the bathroom, And as he was walking back in the compound area where he lived to his room, the bomb fell and destroyed part of their house, including his bedroom. So he was lucky. He was lucky he had gotten up. But he wasn't so lucky because some of the shrapnel from the bomb came and took his leg. So he was hospitalized for over a month before they decided they had to amputate. This man is 20 years old. He had a job. He was a painter. His father paints homes, and he worked with his father painting homes. Now he cannot work. They've been trying to find a prosthetic leg for him. The only ones that are available are wooden ones that are extremely painful. So he's really not able to get around particularly well, and certainly not able to go back to his job as a painter. What this means is not just that his life has been affected, but his entire extended family's life has been affected. He has a sister who was about to start going back to school. And because they've lost his income, they're not able to send his sister or his younger brother to school. So those family members also are now looking for work to bring in income to be able to support the family. They also are trying to be able to rebuild their home. But again, there's no funds from the US government who bombed their house to help them do this. This is on a road outside of Kabul. This is the crater from a US bomb. I don't actually know, there were 2.5-ton bombs dropped and there were 8-ton bombs dropped. I'm not sure which this is, but you can tell these are tents next to it, normal-sized tents that people are living in. So you can tell it's a huge crater. It's pretty impressive. It used to be a soccer field where the kids played. These people are living in tents here because their village has too many landmines and now too many cluster bombs from the US for them to go back to farming. So they're living here along the side of the road near their village next to this crater from the US bomb. Some of these families we had meetings set up with and knew about in advance. Some of them, as one story Rita will share with you, were people we just happened to meet. We were in Kabul the entire time, and it's my understanding Kabul wasn't one of the most heavily bombed areas. And everywhere we turned, someone knew someone whose house had been destroyed. Everywhere we turned, we met more people who'd been affected by the US bombing. Most of these people, surprisingly enough, do not blame the United States. They are happy to be rid of the Taliban by and large, but they do expect the United States to help them. These are families who, just like our families from September 11th, have lost so much and are suffering. But unlike the September 11th families, where we have had so much support, so much love showered on us by people all over the world, these families are not receiving that kind of support, and these families, by and large, do not have the financial means to continue feeding themselves, let alone to rebuild their homes and rebuild their lives. I also want to share another story. When I decided to go to Afghanistan, I talked to my parents, and my mother is an elementary school teacher. And she talked to the students in her school, and the students said, "We want to send something to the children in Afghanistan." So in 2 days, they raised a couple $100, and they drew pictures for me to bring to the children in Afghanistan. While we were there, we visited several schools. One is a girls' school that's newly opened. Most of the girls going there are middle-class children. Most of them that we met had been secretly educated at home, but I think, as you all know, under the Taliban, there were no schools for girls other than the secret schools. Girls weren't allowed to be educated. So most of these girls are back in school for the first time in over 5 years, and very excited to be there. They're sitting on the floor. Some rooms have carpeting. Most do not have desks. The windows have plastic sheeting in them. There's no glass in the windows. The blackboards barely work. But the excitement on their faces is wonderful to see. It's wonderful to see these young women who haven't been allowed to go to school for so long that are back there. So we brought them these stories and letters and cards from the children in America, and we gave the money that we had raised to the principal of the school to go towards some of the repairs that were desperately needed. And there was one girl in one of the classrooms who spoke really good English, and so I asked her if she'd be willing to write a letter that I could bring back to my mother's school on behalf of her school. And so we arranged to come back and pick up the letter, the one letter from her. And Rita and I walked back into the classroom to pick up her letter, and she came and gave us this beautiful card with drawings on it that she had made. And then one by one, every girl in the classroom stood up and brought a card that they had written for the children who had written them cards in America. And I'm just going to read one of those cards. Dear kids of USA, hello dears, we received your letters. Thanks a lot. We are very sorry for September 11th situation in your beautiful country. As you might know, the same situation repeatedly happened in our country since almost 20 years. We have lost our parents, our brothers, sisters. The bloody 20 years war has killed thousands of our people. Among them, the number of children are much more than the others. Accept our greetings, and please do not forget us. We are with you. Sincerely yours, Hangmar Omar. The message that we got repeatedly from these girls at this school, as well as from the families who are the victims of US bombing, and in general from the people of Afghanistan, was please don't forget us. Don't forget the situation we're in. Don't leave us. We need your help. So part of what our message is that not only does the United States need to help Afghanistan as a whole, but in particular these families who, through no fault of their own, have been severely affected by the US bombing, need to be taken care of, and we believe it's the responsibility of the United States government to acknowledge what has happened to them and to set up a compensation fund to help these people.